So a little different video today. No usual skit, I know, next time. But I wanted to kind of talk about my thoughts on this hobby as we stand today. It's just my opinion, as with everything I say on here, right? Opinions. So recently, I have taken a look at one of the latest TKLs from Iris Labs called the Jris 80. Yes, I took a look at the Jris 75 before and the Jris 65 before that as well. Just to preface it, the Jris 80, it's a great keyboard in many different ways, like all of its predecessors were in the past. So that's where this kind of comes from. You know, I was building this and I had this thought. I'm just going to say it, right? This hobby, this custom mechanical keyboarding hobby, it has hit terminal velocity. What does that mean? Well, scientifically, terminal velocity is the maximum speed you hit when you jump off the plane, right? Like the force of gravity pulling you down and the air resistance pushing back against your body, there's a max speed you could achieve through that balance. And that is called terminal velocity. Once you hit terminal velocity, you can't go any faster than that speed. I think we've hit terminal velocity in this hobby. Looking at the Jris 80, it's a good looking keyboard overall. Design, the details, the weights, the small little things. It types fantastically and sounds great. It's not like the softest and the most flexible keyboard, but you don't honestly need that much flex for it to be comfortable. And the price, it's also pretty good, starting at $165. It's nearly as good as it can get for what a keyboard is and what it's supposed to be doing, without going crazy into the extremes, right? What more can you do at this point? I think we hit the limits of how good a keyboard can pretty much sound. Make it softer? For what? Make it shinier? More weights? More screens? More details? I don't know. I think at this point, the future of keyboards, it probably lay in maybe software, maybe the supportive manipulation of input, right? How you more efficiently input. But from a straight hardware perspective, I think we've pretty much hit that limit. It's you remember the computer wars of the 90s? Pentium 1, 2, 3, 4, 521. Then it kind of plateaued off. I think we are pretty much there with keyboards now too. Sorry for the long diatribe, right? But before we jump into the actual Jris 80, a big shout out to OBSBot for sponsoring this video today. So as you may already know, I moved to Korea from the US. And for me to keep in contact with friends and family back home, I actually needed a good webcam. So OBSBot stepped in and said, hey, why don't you take a look at our newest Tiny 2? Tiny 2? When did webcams become good? It doesn't even make any sense to me. So the OBSBot Tiny 2 is the latest iteration of the AI-powered Tiny series 4K webcams from OBSBot. Mouthful, I know. Yes, you heard right. This tiny little thing is able to capture 50 megapixel 4K content in 30 FPS, up to 60 FPS for smaller resolutions. And check out how quickly and accurately this thing focuses. Apparently 4 times faster than before. Not only that, Tiny 2 has a pretty huge 1/1.5, that actually means 2/3 inch big sensor. That's actually almost 4 times more area than most 4K webcams out there. So what that means, it's actually great low light performance. It's also mounted on a 2-axis gimbal. So essentially, the lens kind of floats there on a stabilizer essentially, right? It also means it can move around to track you as well. So this is where the AI comes in. Check this out. It does an amazing job of recognizing you and following your movements, whether you're sitting or standing up and walking around the room. Not only that, this is actually the coolest part. Yeah, the gesture-based controls. Zoom in and out. If you feel weird using gestures, maybe on screen especially, you can also use the voice commands as well. Perhaps I've been out of the webcam game for a while since my OG Logitech, but I was shocked at how amazing the OBSBot Tiny 2 was. And if you're interested in probably one of the best webcams out there for general usage or as a content creator like myself, the Tiny 2 by OBSBot, check it out to the link below. Alright, if you're still watching this video, thank you. I appreciate you, and you're probably Scott, stop talking and show me the keyboard. Alright. You know what? Let's get started on the Jris 80. So the Jris 80 is a TKL, right? Tankeyless F13 TKL to be precise, Overall design is minimal yet balanced with small details that give it some flair. Like the rounded design for me is very reminiscent of the Luna TKL from before. And this little black thing, it looks like a screen, but it's actually a weight. And depending on your color scheme, you could change this out to different materials and looks and colors as well. What's interesting is that the Jris 80 also has some trick up its sleeve as the Jris 75 did. Yes, the ball and catch style screwless case. This allows for like a quick, secure assembly of the case and also a quick and easy disassembly of the case if need be. The catch of the upper case kind of fits into the ball mechanism below and it like snaps right in. It allows for very quick and easy upper case swaps in the case you want to switch things up quickly and easily or go from like WinKey to WinKeyless. The Jris 80 also features a two-weight system with an inner brass weight, which actually also works double as a cover for the internals, like the daughter board and dampers and stuff like that, or batteries if you decide to go wireless. Then below, you got the actual weight. In this case, it's a black stainless PVD. Nothing new at this point, right? But the center weight of the Jris 80 is actually magnetic and interchangeable. Yes, we've seen this like literally 2 weeks ago on the QK75 and the QK80 before that as well. I'm sure a lot of other keyboards have it too. So now the Jris 80 has that too. Moving on to components. The PCB is a thin type, the 1.2mm type. This one has no flex cuts, but you can also choose one width. Lots of options for different layouts like ISO and spacebar sizes. You can do the Sangen. I believe it's like part also of the Iris Black Core line. Before I move on, I have something to ask you guys. I don't know, maybe just me, but have KO hot swap sockets been like sucking lately for you? Like for me, like when the switch is plugged in, instead of the contacts like spreading and letting the switch come in, it like collapses in. Such a huge pain, but I don't know. I've seen this in like the last 3 keyboards. I kid you not. It can't even be a coincidence at this point. So if you see this, let me know. Anyways, I have 2 plates for this sample, the standard aluminum plate and the softer palm plate. So the palm plate is flexible, so you don't see any flex cuts, but the alu plate has some. One thing to note, honestly guys, like unless the flex cut is like running across a large portion of the plate and allows for the segments to like move against each other, and also has corresponding cuts in the PCB below to match, they're more for decorations honestly and probably affects sound more than the feel. That's just my 2 cents. You could press against cuts, they don't even move, they're just there for looks at this point for some situations. Foam, yes, 2023, foam in keyboards, expected. Like the other Jris boards, the 80 also has a PC, it's also a PCB mounted, design, which means that you could technically run this as a playlist. I'm not the biggest fan of that, so I'm not really gonna do that here today. I think playlist builds generally sound thinner and a lot of the times feel a little too floppy for me. But I do really like half plates, so. Like other boards these days, the Jris 80 also uses these little hourglass silicone pegs. What's interesting is that the tab is also cut to allow for easier flex on the top. So it should be pretty flexible, right? In addition, you can control how flexible or bouncy this whole entire thing is by adjusting the number of pegs you use. Like all 3 stiffer and 1 softer, 2 in the middle, right? It's all about resistance. Then this keyboard should be super flexible, right? Not really. The case profile isn't that tall, so it's good for the wrist, but it won't really have the space for like the stuff inside to flex around, especially if you use the case phones. It's physics. You need space to move around. You can see that here, but don't get me wrong, it dampens well still, and that's all that matters. You don't really need it to flap around. Okay, so good looks, check. All the coveted features and options, check. Comfortable feel, check. What about the sound then? So for the first one, I will actually build it out in a more classic way, right? With no foam and aluminum plate. I'm using a set of looped Gateron baby Raccoon long stem linears. Yeah, Gateron names, think of these as like a long stem like Gat yellows or reds pretty much. So you know what, take a listen. Surprising, right? That actually sounds really good, like super clean, very minimal case imperfections despite the no foam. I'm pleasantly satisfied with this thing right now. The best part of this is especially that space bar. It has that like snappy sound I really like. And I think the case sound control has to do with that double weight and like the chamber within a chamber design of the Jris 80, right? From a sound perspective, the Jris 80 in this build configuration is a clean, clacky keyboard. Okay, but some of you guys are about that foam. So then let's build this thing with all the foam, including that PE foam sheet that was included. How does that sound then? And let's throw on the palm plate also, since usually it's a good combination with the foam in my opinion. Like before, I'm also going to be using the same Gateron baby Racoon linears. Racoons. Here we go. Yep, sounds foamier, but not too crazy foamy. But definitely more foamy than without. However, it's not a bad sound. It's not like, oh my god, this sounds so foamy. It's not that. It just sounds a little different. One thing in common that the Jris 80 has, like whether you have the foam or not, it's pretty clacky. Something to keep in mind, this is a clackier sounding keyboard, higher pitch, both configurations. But I'm sure like that or something in between, they're all gonna sound pretty good, and it's really good especially at this price point. So, like I said, unless you're into like gold cladding keyboards or using ultra precision machinery or like custom art or something crazy like that, I don't think you can really put out a better keyboard than this at this point, especially at this price, because everyone uses similar concepts, similar components, and now there's like an underlying expectation for what keyboards are and how they're supposed to perform and look. Manufacturers, for the most part, can hit that pretty easily for a very good price. The days of like grabbing a keyboard, realizing it sucks and have to figure out how to mod it so it doesn't suck as much, I think it's over. I mean, I haven't had the shelf liner mod or tape mod or something like that to a keyboard in a long time. At least not because the keyboard was bad. Like if I wanted to do it to shape it that way, maybe, but there was no need to. So, like I said, we hit terminal velocity. I think if manufacturers can work on like creating better, maybe more useful software, and figure out how to like make typing and input somehow more efficient or easier, I think that might be like the next frontier. Like Wooting did with their Switch, and like not just the Switch, it's like the software and how all of it works together. Or I could just be full of it and I have no idea what I'm talking about. That can really possibly be true as well. The Jris 80 is a great option for someone looking for a solid TKL with great feature sets at a very approachable price point. The Jris 80 starts at around $165 and goes up based on the options and finishes and stuff like that you throw at it. I mean, you can even add a knob where the pause key will typically go. Totally up to you. So as usual, if you enjoyed this video or my rants, please like and subscribe, and I'll have more ranting for you in the future. Thanks.